Some people teach entrepreneurship like it's just a building the business. Our guest today teaches it like it's a life skill, something you can use whether you're launching a startup or just figuring out what's next. She's the head of entrepreneurial skills at Entrepreneurship Institute, King's College London. And today we are going deep into what it really means to think and act like an entrepreneur. Welcome to another episode of School to Startup, brought to you by Tracxn, a private market intelligence platform that's been supporting the global startup ecosystem for over 12 years now. Through our university partnerships, we work with institutions that are building the next generation of innovators. And this series highlights the academic leaders making that happen. I'm Harish, your host for today, and joining us is Rachel. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great. So let's start with your journey. You're helping people build businesses and shape their careers. But what got you into this work? How did your path lead here?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a different journey into entrepreneurship education. My background is in skill development. So after university myself, I worked for the Scouts for 4 years, helping young people round out their skills and become confident global citizens that were confident to kind of take on the world by taking them to big overseas international events. I took 4,000 Scouts from the UK to Japan in 2015 for the World Scout Jamboree. And from that, I really gained a passion for the type of learning that can happen outside of a traditional classroom environment. And from there, I moved back into higher education. So I worked for Goldsmiths University for a while in their careers department, really coaching students on how to find and then articulate the skills that they'd gained from experiences outside the classroom. So whether that meant being part of a leadership team for a student society, whether that was volunteering alongside their degree program, whether that was taking part in award programs that their university had to offer. And really from there, it was that I had the opportunity to join King's Entrepreneurship Institute because they were looking for somebody who could speak to the more skills side of entrepreneurship than just building businesses, as you kind of kindly said in my introduction, that actually everybody else in the team had a real background in helping businesses grow. And they knew that if you only talk to the students at a university that are ready to start a business, you're only going to talk to a really small percentage of them. And that actually entrepreneurial skills and the way that entrepreneurs behave and think have something of value to add to any student who is thinking about what they want to do with their career and what it might mean to be entrepreneurial in your career, regardless of what that career is. So that's why I got brought in, because actually it was a benefit at that stage for me not having a background in entrepreneurship, because I could really understand the differences in the skills that they were focusing on that were different to the skill development that I'd been focused on for young people and things in the rest of my career. What was unique to entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial skill set that doesn't get talked about in any other kind of skill development arena? So that was my kind of pathway in, and I've been at King's Entrepreneurship Institute for nearly 7 years now, developing out that work and really defining the way that we talk about entrepreneurial skills and what it means to have an entrepreneurial mindset as a human, and then how you can deploy that in different settings and contexts.
Very interesting. And what's something you're working on right now that really lights you up? It could be a program, a story, a win from a student, anything.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of key thing to understand about the way we work at the Entrepreneurship Institute is the thing that I developed when I first arrived at King's was a framework called the 7 skills of an entrepreneurial mindset. And that really underpins everything that we do. There's like 7 individual key skills that we can teach individually or in connection with each other that we really think unlocks the entrepreneurial mindset. So that's skills like how to compel, how to think disruptively, how to validate and think lean about your idea, how to have a growth mindset, how to build teams effectively, and how to get stuff done. And these combination of skills that we can focus on really unlock students' imagination and their agency and autonomy, and how they have permission to go out and solve big problems in the world. And you really see a shift in their kind of self-efficacy when they get the hang of using these skills and deploying them in different contexts. So At the moment, we have a range of programs that kind of work to these different skills and build them in different ways. So everything from, we have a program called the Idea Factory, which is our early stage business idea competition. And one of the new things that we've launched over the last year is an online incubator, because what we realized was, and one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurship centers have is an early stage business idea competition. But because it's a competition, it narrows down the field, right? Only a certain number of ideas can get through and progress onto the final, which again is bottlenecking the number of people that can move forward. So the thing that we really wanted to do was have a learning opportunity so that anyone with an idea could move forward at their own pace and unlock more opportunities to progress for mentorship and for funding as they went through it, which is exactly what we've built. So we have a new online incubator, which takes people from I have an idea through to building a functioning MVP and getting their first customers on board step by step, that they can go through at their own pace, and has opportunities to unlock funding as they go through and progress through the different modules on that platform. One of the other programs that has been a real boon for us is we recognize that obviously entrepreneurship opportunity isn't equally distributed, and we have a real drive towards making entrepreneurship accessible for as many different groups as possible. So we have a thriving women entrepreneurs network at King's, where hundreds of women who are working on entrepreneurial ideas get extra support and community built around them to help them progress forward with their ideas. We also have a program called Game Changers, which is around supporting students from low income backgrounds to be able to get a salary like you would in an internship, but to build their own idea over the summer. So we have a lot going on, a lot to be excited about, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight into our kind of priorities and our thinking around how anyone can be entrepreneurial, and that we want to give opportunities to everybody.
Very interesting. Before we deep dive, this is for our viewers. If you're still with us, you clearly care about startups ideas, or you're just curious how entrepreneurial thinking actually works. So do this now: like, comment, and subscribe to the Tracxn channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what's coming next. All right. Talking about the mindset, about the students as well. What trends are you seeing in the startup space right now, and how is academia adapting to that?
Okay, there's a few that I would point out. I think they won't come as a surprise to anyone. First one being AI. When we look at the numbers of ideas that we have coming through the institute, so many of them are either AI at their core, using AI to solve a problem, or AI is facilitating their product or service in some way. And I think there's two sides to that we need to kind of be aware of. I think AI development is moving so fast that we just have to be a little bit careful around the ethics and sustainability around that. And I think universities are really well placed to have an active part in that discussion. We have an AI institute at King's, and we talk to them quite a lot around how are we guiding our entrepreneurs, not just to think about the possibilities of AI, but to think about where are they getting their data sets? Are they, by using them, are they going to be perpetuating any type of bias? What's the environmental sustainability impact of the AI that they're going to be using? Just so that they're not charging forward without realizing the potential consequences. We talk about value deconstruction quite a lot. If you're solving one problem over here, are you creating adversely another problem over here by not realizing? So making sure that we're being responsible in our kind of use of AI and how we're enabling students to use it. Having said that, it is a huge leveler, right? The number of students that can have an idea, speak to Replit, Lovable, Bolt, any of these kind of AI tools, and have a working MVP in a number of hours is really exciting in the world of AI, where they were blocked out because they didn't have a technical background before. We're now seeing really fast-paced innovation happening in being able to iterate and prototype, which is very exciting. And the other one, I would say that students just really care. So a lot of the students that we're seeing come through, they are wanting to build businesses that aren't just profitable, but they're good for the planet and for people. And I think that sustainability element is really clear from students coming through university now, that they have a real ethical kind of drive, that they want to do something that matters. They want to make money and they want to be successful, but they don't want to do that at the expense of people and planet. So I think being alive to that and finding opportunities to work on problems that are real problems in the world. We talk about the difference between kind of real and kind of gravity problems of like, if you're making sure that you're doing your research in a way that shows that the problem that you're focusing on is something that the world needs solutions for and will need and pay for those solutions, but that also aligns with your personal values. I think that trend hopefully is another way to go. I think the one thing that we need to be alive to as universities in trends is just how burnt out students can be. I think we have to be very careful that they're studying, King's, we have a huge proportion of our students are international students. They're studying for degrees in their non-first language. It's so impressive, right? They're bringing a range of cultural diversity to our university, which is phenomenal, but they're got full-time degree programs going on. They're often involved in other student activities. They're often living away from home, which brings its own kind of pressures, and that they're then building a business on top of that. We just have to make sure that, entrepreneurship narratives have often come alongside a lot of hustle culture narratives of you have to be giving this 25 hours in every day, and we have to be careful that how our entrepreneurship support functions at university are supporting the humans as well as the businesses, and not just pushing for more kind of big results around investment and revenue and jobs created, but that we're making sure we're setting the students up for success long term.
Very interesting. You also coach founders, not just on strategy, but sanity as well. So, what's the most common "I'm struggling" moment you have seen, and how do you help them move through it without losing the idea of their mind?
Yeah, so I guess outside of my role at King's, I run a coaching company called The Disruptive Realm, and my clients are usually accelerator programs, right? And they bring me in to coach their founders that are anything from idea stage right the way through to kind of Series E. I've coached founders that are planning their exits and have raised hundreds of millions of pounds. And the things that you see through it, the thing that's fascinating to me is that a lot of the conversations I have with those founders, regardless of stage, are actually quite similar. They are around, if we're talking about the founder well-being side of things, they're usually stress and burnout, particularly around financial pressures, that especially as you start to grow a business, you're responsible for other people's salaries, and founders really feel the weight and responsibility of that and wanting to do right by their people when they start building out a team. Being able to navigate multiple priorities at the earlier stage, before you have a team, you are head of product, head of sales, head of strategy, head of finance, head of, you are everything. You have to be a sort of jack of all trades, and just managing the weight of that. I think a lot of founders struggle to know how to allocate their time as their most kind of precious resource in the early stages. And then you also have things like, one of my specialisms in coaching is around imposter syndrome, that entrepreneurship is sort of a pressure cooker and breeding ground for imposter syndrome, because especially in the startup world, you're often kind of pitching for investment and having to persuade people to the tune of millions of pounds, potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds at least, that you are the right person, that you know exactly how to do this, that you're confident that there's a market opportunity here. You have to convince people of all of that, whilst it's the first time this business has ever been built, and you are potentially jack of all trades. There is a real cognitive dissonance that goes on between internally what you're figuring out and what's happening in the business, and the front and the mask you have to put on externally to be able to persuade and compel people to back your idea. And a lot of founders really struggle with the difference between that, and being able to reconcile and tell their authentic story through that journey when they're having to play two very different roles. So I think it's a really interesting space to be in, because one of my amazing colleagues at King's, Uta Stefan, is one of our professors in the business school. One of her research specialisms is around founder well-being, and she talks about the well-being paradox in entrepreneurship, that actually you have this real benefit of people finding far more purpose and meaning in their work being an entrepreneur, that you're being able to do something that you've chosen to do and that you believe will really benefit the world. But at the same time, you have this kind of high stress environment with a lot of pressure and a lot of uncertainty that can obviously impact your mental and physical well-being if it's not looked after properly. So you end up with this like real positive and real negative at the same time that you have to balance. So having coaching And I think more accelerator programs and more entrepreneurial support organizations are realizing the value of having coaches on programs that can really support the humans through that. Because if you don't look after the human, you're not going to have a business. The founders are the business in the early stages, right? So I think that investment is starting to increase, but obviously I would love to see more people realize that there needs to be investment around looking after the people that are building these really awesome businesses.
Interesting. I think you answered my next question subtly. But have there been any moment where a non-business insight changed how someone built something?
Yeah, I think there's been a number of moments where founders have had crossroads where they could go after just sheer growth and profit, but they realize that that would be at the expense of their team's well-being, and that there's not, I think the kind of messages that you get at the kind of high end of startup culture is sort of, you have to be willing to break yourself to get to that level of success. And I think actually I'm starting to see glimmers of hope that there's like other ways of building businesses that don't require that level of sacrifice, and that people are doing really well with it. And I think it connects back to our AI point. You know, there's plenty of people saying, and I fully believe, that there will be businesses that have one human that are valued at $1 billion, that the team is all like the rest of the team is automation. And I think being able to leverage those tools for good. I know that it's a tool, right? It can be used for good or bad. Being able to harness and for us as entrepreneurship educators to learn the ways that those tools can be used for good, I think will be of huge benefit. But I think I've seen a number of founders sort of say, I'm going to go for the option that won't kill me. You know, like I'm going to go for the option that means that I can get 8 hours sleep a night, because I know I'll make better decisions in the morning if I'm doing that. And obviously there's always times in business where you have to push harder and then you can take your foot off the brake. Like it's not a steady, even journey all the time. But I think I'm hoping that we will see more of that. The hustle culture is still there. You know, I've seen loads of companies, you know, saying, oh, we're building in stealth mode and we're coding 20 hours of the day and stuff. It's still there. And so for some people, they absolutely thrive off that. Is it sustainable is my question. Like if you're going to do a sprint and you really get the energy and momentum of that, I'm not going to tell you that it's wrong. What I want you to ask and be able to say to yourself is that you're looking after yourself in the way that you know, and you can only do that if you know yourself well enough and you know your boundaries and you can see the red flags coming when you're starting to not feel so great. I think there's also opportunities. There's a entrepreneurship kind of methodology that's talked about called effectuation, which is using what you already have to build your business forward, rather than thinking, how do I solve that problem, and building backwards. So thinking about, who do I already know? Who could I partner with? A much more ethos around kind of collaboration. What resources can I use? What am I willing to sacrifice, rather than what is the sacrifice needed? So it's much more kind of person centered. And I think as entrepreneurship educators, we can use that far more as the way that we talk to founders around how do they move into their next steps of like, who could you collaborate with, what's already in your kind of resource suitcase that you have with you. How can we think about moving really well from where you are to your next step, and bringing all of your kind of best assets into that, rather than thinking about having to keep up with what the perception is that is required from entrepreneurship.
So, continuing, my next question, I'm kind of curious. Have you or have your students or founders who are part of your coaching session ever turned the entrepreneurial mindset back on you, like pitching an assignment extension as a strategic pivot, or using stakeholder mapping to argue their grade?
No, I've never had that. I have a lot of students who get into quite interesting conversations around the part of the benefit of talking about entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial skills is being able to open up a conversation about what it means to be entrepreneurial with students who don't think it's relevant to them. So what I get more often is, say we're at the beginning of a start of an academic year, right? We've got loads of new students flooding into King's at the moment. And if they have never considered that they might be an entrepreneur in the future, and we have our half of our subjects taught at King's are medical related, right? We teach huge amounts of dentists, doctors, nurses, and often they know that they're coming to King's to study to be a doctor or a nurse or a dentist. They have a very narrow field of what they are expecting to do post-graduation. So when we rock up and say, hey, we're the Entrepreneurship Institute, they're like, I don't need to talk to you. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. But the question that we're able to ask is, well, what would it mean to you to be an entrepreneurial doctor or an entrepreneurial nurse? Like, I'm not telling you to not become a doctor. I'm just saying, like, what would that add to or change about the view that you have of what your future career might look like? And then you're able to have conversations around, oh, well, that probably means I'd be working at the like cutting edge of my field, or I'd be doing things to make improvements to the way things are done, or I'd be working on new ways, new treatments, or new innovations in patient care, or and you're like, oh, or for dentists, oh, that might mean running my own dental practice. Okay, is that something that you're interested in? And they're like, oh, I have never thought about it like that. Or can I tell you about some of the awesome medical startups that we've had come out of King's? Like, these are people who came through your course, spotted a problem in the field, and thought, I can do something about that. So I'm not telling you have to do any of this. I'm just saying, like, being curious to learn a little bit about what these skills might do for you might just broaden the view of where your career might be able to go in future within medicine. But we do that across the board with different subjects, right? So if a student says, oh, I've come to study law, what would it mean to be an entrepreneurial lawyer? If they've come to study marketing, what would it look like to be an entrepreneurial marketeer? Like, we can have that conversation, and it often leads them to have really reflective, interesting thoughts about their career path. But also, to your original point, we often talk about how they could use our entrepreneurial skills within their studies. So we talk about, think lean as being one of our kind of core 7 skills around, rather than trying to shoot for perfection first time round, what would it look like to create a minimum viable and then iterate from there? So if you had an assignment, what would it look like to create the minimal viable one of that and get feedback from your tutor before you have to hand it in, with enough time that you've actually, by the time you hand it in, are on version 3 or 4, I bet you that grade will be better than the one you would have had if you'd handed it in first time round. We talk a lot about get it done is another one of our key skills, and we spend a lot of time there talking to students around how to overcome procrastination, how to keep themselves motivated over the long term, how to inspire other people to come out to work with them. And so there's real applicability in the skills in being a student at King's that they can use to be successful within their courses and get the results that they want as a student as well, which I think for a lot of students is where they start, right? If they've never considered being an entrepreneur, we talk to them about how our skills can serve them in their role as a student. And for a lot of them, that then sparks curiosity around, how could it be applied in my future career? I've never considered starting a business. Maybe I'll have a play at that and come and join our kind of sandbox environment where they can get to play without the pressure of having to commit to it full time.
Amazing. And talking about the future, if you could redesign how universities teach entrepreneurship, what would you want to see more in the next few years?
Oh, what would I like to see? I'd like to see, there needs to be investment from the university in this stuff. We're very lucky at King's that we have our senior leaders understand the value of entrepreneurship, and there's been lots of investment in the spin out side of things as well, of being able to support research staff to commercialize their research and turn that into businesses. But I think there's quite a lot of instability in higher education at the moment, so just having our resources kind of secure and mapped out for the next few years would help us plan the best programs that we can for students and those pathways. I think the thing that I really see, so our Entrepreneurship Institute, we sit separate to all of the faculties, and we support entrepreneurship activity across all 9 of our faculties at King's. So we dip into different programs and add entrepreneurial flavors of things across different programs. And I think that model is what I would like to see more of, is more opportunities on the curriculum to add additions of entrepreneurship so that they can see the relevance and how that skill set could attach itself to the course that they're studying and get them interested in what innovation looks like in their field. I think a lot of entrepreneurship centres at universities sit separately like we do, but that they expect the students to come to them and it's all happens kind of outside of their program, or they're studying entrepreneurship and it's all in curriculum. So I like this like blended approach of how can we make learning entrepreneurship incredibly practical and incredibly relevant to the student. Like if they've decided to come and study natural sciences at university, that's what they're interested in. And I want to be able to go to them and say, have you thought about what it would look like to attach entrepreneurship to what you're already interested in? Because I think that's a far easier route for students to understand and find their own passion than it is trying to persuade students to do an extra thing outside of their curriculum and come to us all the time. That might happen once they've got the bug, you know, and then they want to do more. But really, I think we have to think about how do we meet the students where they are, because they've got so much going on, you know. There's even within King's, we look at the huge amount of opportunities that students have for different societies and getting involved in different initiatives and things. We are of a number of different things. So I think being able to work with the academics that are teaching different subjects across the university and say, we have this suite of awesome extra learning materials that could get your students presenting better. We will teach them how to compel people. We will get them to come up with better ideas by teaching them how to be disruptive thinkers, and being able to add that value into the programs, I think is the thing for me. That then just requires resource, right? Like we're a small team, and if we were doing that across the university, we have to have the resource to be able to do that. But we've got some real interesting success cases where we're doing that really well, and it has improved the student success ratings on those modules where they've felt there's value being added by what we're able to bring in. So that's the kind of method and what we're doing at King's, right, is trying to find those opportunities to go and meet the students in curriculum. And then for those that really love it and want more, they're able to come and benefit from the extracurricular additional programs that we have.
Interesting. And before we wrap, what's one piece of advice you would give someone just starting out, a student, a founder, or anyone trying to build something real?
So it's hard to narrow it down to one. So I might be cheeky and say two. The first one is get used to putting your ego to one side. Like everyone thinks that their idea is amazing, and people don't really. I get a lot of students that come to me and say, this is my idea, do you think it's good? And they get frustrated with me when I say, I can't answer that question. I'm not your target customer. The only way you're going to understand whether your idea is valuable is to go out and talk to potential customers and really understand if there is a need for what you have come up with. And you might need to change it a variety of different times to get to the version that people will want, need, and pay for. And you have to be willing to do the unsexy bit of entrepreneurship, which is going out and doing your validation and your market research really thoroughly first, because the ones that commit to doing that are the ones that we've seen absolutely fly. And they come back to me later on and say, you know, that advice you gave me right at the beginning, my investors are now telling me that's the reason they've invested, because I've gone through the process thoroughly. And like, okay, awesome. So I would say, make sure that you're validating and getting evidence for the decisions that you're making, and trust your customers more than anybody else. And the second one comes back to what we were talking about before, which is look after yourself in the process. You are your business's most valuable asset, particularly at the beginning. If you're not looking after yourself, you're not looking after your business. So take that seriously, and have good people around you, because that will be the people will help. If you can't recognize it in yourself, if you've got good people around you, they will help you stay on track.
That was amazing. So we talked about entrepreneurship as mindset, as leadership, and as a way to navigate chaos without burning out. I think you are building a generation of very persuasive rebels at King's College London. Big thanks to you for being part of this episode. Always great to learn from you. Thank you very much. For our viewers, again, if you enjoyed this conversation, like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you don't miss the next episode of School to Startup. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.